originally, what was the original event? Was it like Mark or was it like Matthew? And scholars obviously are going to prefer the earlier story to the later one, because you can see how someone might want to embellish and improve a story, but it's hard to believe why why the author Matthew, if he was first, would deliberately downgrade and make the disciples appear inferior. He would take away their model-like status as disciples of Jesus. You can see it will work one way, but not the other. And that's the kind of common sense logic that scholars have. So it's not just Jesus, the apostles as well.
Common sense logic though. If they're hard of heart, and then something happens, then that hardness of heart changes, because we know from our own human experience that our hearts can change. You can have a particular, I'm a teacher, so I'm working with kids all the time, and they come into a lesson and they're like, oh, this is boring or whatever, but by the time you're done, you haven't lied to them, you haven't done anything, they've come round. So, depending on who they were writing to, there's no reason why those things can't harmonize.
I think they
Just
can.
as I'm thinking.
No, that's a very good observation. The reason it's slightly problematic for me is that Mark consistently portrays the apostles in a negative way.
Yeah.
Consistently. This is not an isolated example. Matthew consistently portrays the disciples in a positive way. So we have a negative portrayal in one gospel and a positive portrayal in the main in another.
Yeah.
So your understanding as a teacher won't really work because you have two different redactions of the same material.
Yeah, we have different audiences, right?
But if we're historians, we want to know what actually happened. Which one is more closer to the actual event? Because the event itself didn't have, as a final thing, the disciples...
When you take the thing as a whole.
But you see, that's not a gospel that exists in the New Testament. What you've done is you created a fifth gospel. You had Matthew, Mark, Luke and John, and your fifth gospel, which doesn't say what Mark says or Matthew says. You've smashed the two together to create a fifth gospel, which is not what Mark says, and it's not what Matthew says.
The gospel of Jesus. We'll never know.
Exactly.
Unless we had tape recordings of his
And
sermons.
that's where the Quran comes in.
But sorry, why are there only 4 accepted gospels in the New Testament? Other than the other gospels out there, and what's the criteria?
I know Paul will tell you about the other gospels, that they're late, much later, they're not eyewitness, the language, they don't use the right names, they don't use the right places. This is a random thing that I was
I didn't hear Jay. I haven't heard Jay. I've been still talking. I haven't heard a word Jay says. But I know from
You can imagine the gist of it. He brought up 26 Qurans. He went through.
I need to hear the detail. I need to hear the detail.
I'm sure you're aware of what the
But I've already said the differences do not matter. Synonyms, for example, do not matter.
Did he say
What
something?
would be the criteria used to stop it?
Well, I don't know. I've not heard what he said. You're asking me to pass judgment on a speech I've not heard. No, that's not fair, is it? You give me the headlines, but I need to hear exactly what he said. I can do.
Let's assume
we know which one, and
I will give a synopsis of what he said.
you can consider the gospel.
There's 26 Qurans.
Where are they from? I need to know each of these ones. Where are they from? It's good to detail here. I can't deal with headlines. I need to know the nitty-gritty facts. Well, we're not going to go through them all now. You don't know what they are.
Some of them are new criteria.
There is a dispute about how many readings. As Adam said, there was 10. I've heard different figures. But none of these readings affect the fundamental veracity, integrity, and reliability of the Quran. So the question really, the real issue here for me is that the way Jay and a few others tendentiously manipulate the evidence to try and discredit Islam as such, so he can convert people to Christianity. Now that's not a scholarly. No.
All apologists do that to some.
I'm not manipulating. When I mention, for example, F.F. Bruce or Richard Balkan, I'm trying to give you what they say. I'm not trying to manipulate.
It's not manipulation. It's kind of more of a selective acceptance of different pieces of evidence based on what you're going at.
No, it's not. I'll explain to you why I don't agree with that statement. J. Smith's methodology is like this. I think it's discreditable. Let me explain what it is. When it comes to Christian issues to do with, say, the authorship of the Gospels, he will adopt the most conservative fundamentalist position. He will believe that Matthew wrote Matthew's Gospel, John wrote John's Gospel, Mark wrote. Now, this is something that, frankly,
You don't have to go there. I agree.
okay, good. I'm glad we did. But I want to make the point here in context, because on the one hand, he is fundamentalist when it comes to his own Bible, his own religion. That's one attitude, a fundamentalist approach and methodology with the Bible. When it comes to the Quran and Islam, he will adopt the opposite. He will adopt a hyper-skeptical approach to the sources, to the Quran, the history.
You're not going to get any
No,
disagreement.
okay. But my point is this: that he is not adopting a general scholarly, objective methodology here. He is ultra fundamentalist on his own faith, ultra skeptical on his other faith. Now, that's why I don't take what he says seriously, because the scholars I quote are mainstream Christian scholars who I believe actually affirm Muslim beliefs. But he won't do that. He won't quote Muslim scholars that affirm Christian belief, will he? Because he
I don't
can't.
think we need to take. I never take what he says for granted. I listen to the ideas like I would listen to anyone's ideas, and then go check them out. You know, obviously when he gets all upset about the Quran and says this and this, and then says we have a book with 4 eyewitnesses. You know, I
It's
feel
a
like
joke.
saying,
It's a joke.
You can't
Exactly. You see, but he knows. The question knows that. There's a difference between him and I. He knows better. When you tell me the Quran comes in different readings and there can be these issues, I say yes. Actually, Islamic scholars have always known this, and educated Muslims down here, like this brother Mansur, and Hashim, who's not here today, will all say, yeah, we know that. Everyone's known about that. But he knows better about his own Gospels. He knows that virtually every scholar in the world doesn't think the Apostle Matthew wrote Matthew. I mean, this is a view that went out in the 18th century because the evidence is so strongly against it. But he still holds that view. What does that say about his integrity as a communicator, as a apologist?
I'm not going to say that he hasn't.
But then why are we talking about him? Can we talk about
because he said some things today, some people got upset. I was curious if people thought they were true or if they were false.
I've never heard anyone say 26 before.
I've had a cursory glance at the issue, and it seems like the things that he said, there are different ratings. I don't know how many, 26 I imagine.
We know that
might be an exaggeration.
massively exaggerated. I'm aware of about 10, but you see, the principle is accepted.
Well, yes,
The principle is accepted.
the fact that there are, I don't know, among those there are, I don't know, 5,000 different changes, what do you call them?
What changes? You need to get specific examples.
Changes would be, this has one word, this has another. Even if it's a difference of an aleph here or a couple of
Exactly.
dots here or whatever it is.
This is known about, accepted. See, as I said to you before, just a very briefly repetition of the point. A lot of Muslim apologists that you will meet, unfortunately, are not. They don't have knowledge. They just shake Google. They've seen one ayah, a video, or whatever they've seen, and then they go out and they talk to Christians and they give them a load of stuff that's not accurate or even true. And they talk rubbish about Christianity as well. I've often seen this down here. They would say that Christianity which are just awfully, just rubbish. So they're not basing their apology on knowledge. So we need to go to people who know the subject well and ask them about what Islam teaches. Not about people who know very little and yet they're puffed up and they've come out of their homes and they come down here and then Christians just shoot them off. And I agree they deserve to do
I don't necessarily come here for that. I'm usually curious about what people believe and why.
Perhaps that's more psychology or anthropology, I don't know.
Because like you said, I have people stare me in the face and tell me things that I know is absolute false. And they're 100% sure of it, and they're making fun of it for my things.
What do you-
I stand there and think, how can you believe it? And you know, I generally don't dip my toe into the theological side of it. I think it's personal in some places. There's certain things that
Are you a Christian? Do you believe?
I'm not anti.
No, I'm not saying are you against it. I'm saying, do you believe that there is a creator of the universe, or do you believe that there is not? Do you want agnostic?
My personal opinion, what I've read is that's quite possible, and I don't think any of the books that you have, no matter what they are necessarily an accurate description. I think of them a lot like the way you describe the book of John. no truth to it at all.
I'm not saying no truth, don't get me wrong. I'm saying
No historical truth.
I'm saying that
Like there might be truth in terms of
he talks about a person
You
who
should be good
existed,
to
he
each
talks
other
about
or
a person who
something
did
like that.
miracles, he talks about someone who had just a lot of it is true in that sense, but the speeches, the discourses that are attributed to Jesus are commonly seen as not historical by scholars.
See, I might go a step further.
It's a more nuanced position. Are you a mythicist? You don't believe Jesus existed?
No, I wouldn't say that. I would probably. I haven't looked at. I think it's difficult to prove the mythicist thing because the evidence is all on one side.
Yeah.
And the mythicists kind of have to go and kind of make up these cases of, oh, we've got all these other stories and these kind of myths saying. I mean, historically, it looks like he probably existed. I mean, kind of Josephus is enough for me. There's enough scholars that accept those couple of passages, and even though they're small, it seems to me that he existed.
He was a contemporary of Jesus and was
Seems
from
to me
Jerusalem.
that he existed. I wouldn't mortgage my house on one side or the other. It looks to me like he existed. Is there really a lot of evidence to say so? Really. But it's like all history. I mean, when you go back that far, it gets more and more difficult to say